Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. I am Jimmy Smith, and I'm a very, very happy sober alcoholic. Hello, everybody. Where's James? If that was the way it was, it would have had to have been that way. I know a lot of people say they drank liquor, they start hunting a woman. I didn't want nothing to do with no woman when I took a drink. So she would have had to rape me. I've enjoyed this a whole lot. CD, as usual, outstanding talk. I really get a kick out of it, and I get a lot of blessings out of it, too. I appreciate y'all asking me up here, Dan. For years and years, nobody invited me to anything. People told me where to go all the time. But I'm just so glad to be invited anyway. I'm from Lincolnton. Anybody in here don't know where Lincolnton is? Raise your hand. Boy, y'all a dumb bunch, I tell you. Lincolnton is 120 miles due east. It's 40 miles north of Augusta, a little bitty town. About 200 people, one block downtown, one block uptown. I live 2 blocks from that, and the jail's right between me and town. And that's going to come in hand in a little bit. But it's so good to get up here and see all these new friends and these old friends. But I still see one big problem with all of you. All of you got an ego big as the world. Y'all know what ego is? Man, right before the great San Francisco earthquake, he passed out. When it was all over with, he raised up and he looked at all of that destruction and he said, Lord, how will I ever pay for all of this? That's the ego problem. And C.D. a while ago mentioned something about judges, going to jail and all that stuff. Most judges I know kind of acted like God went on vacation and left them in charge. And this one particular one that I know, he just reared back and get his poor soul sitting down in front of him. He just gave him all he could give him. And he was real proud of himself. And he reared back, and a fly got to buzzing around his head, just going zzz around his head. And he was slapping and knocking at the fly, and he got the bailiff to try to help him kill it. And he asked him what kind of fly it was, and he didn't know. And they got the sheriff involved, and he didn't know. And he was just zzz around his head. The little fellow raised his hand and said, I know what it is, Your Honor. He says, you do? Said, what is it? He said, it's a zuzu fly. He said, I ain't never heard of a zuzu fly. I said, what kind of fly is that? He said, oh, you know, Your Honor, the kind that always be buzzing around horses' ass. He said, are you trying to say that's what I am? He said, oh, no, sir, Your Honor, but you don't fool them zuzu flies. No. This is half of AA right now. I told that for this purpose. This is half of AA, laughter. When I first started coming to AA, I didn't have sense enough to know anything, but y'all were laughing, y'all were having a good time, and I couldn't understand it. I just could not understand it to save my neck because you were enjoying yourself. I would come into a meeting, and I would think, boy, this is marvelous, this is wonderful, because you would hug me, and you'd kiss me, and you'd tell me to come back. And then nobody ever tell me to come back anywhere I went. But always you had fun. Stand outside any meeting you want to and you hear laughter. People having a good time. If we were all sitting in here, long, drawn face, looking like this, who would want it? No one. We want to know how to live. And that's where we find out right here in AA. Now, most drunks I know describe their symptoms about the same way. Most of us have a hole in our belly and the wind blows through and the butterflies are flying in and out of it. We're full of fear and guilt and shame and remorse and all these things. For a little while, alcohol will help that. But somewhere in a few years, it quit helping and starts doing to us instead of for us. But you still have people, and I did all my life, saying, now, Jimmy, you just don't drink and everything will be fine. And I would quit drinking alcohol and I would be dry. I still was a drunk. I still had a hole in my belly and the butterflies and the fear and the guilt and the shame and all these feelings that I had. I was dry, not sober. That's the wonderful part about AA. You come to AA and you get sober. How do you get sober? Simple as it. What is sober first? Dictionary says sober is to be calm and normal and rational. I like another word better, or several other words. I like happy, joyous, and free. That's sobriety to me. And you get sobriety by not drinking today, going to meetings today, and working these steps today. If you don't have it, people, you're cheating yourself. C.D. told you a while ago, we would cut ourselves short. If you don't have a good measure of peace and joy and happiness and serenity, start working a little bit harder on it. I know some people have been around the program 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 years that call themselves sober. I can't take their inventory, but I can read what they advertise. And you come into a meeting and they sitting there with that long face and say, how you today, John? I'm fine. And I say, well, you happy? Yeah, I'm real happy. But they don't never do nothing but bitch and gripe, moan and complain. And I say it to them, if you're happy, tell your face about it. Let it know that you're happy. You know, you're sitting up here looking like an old wet hen and you're miserable. If people were that way when I came to AA, it would be awful for me. Because I'd still be out there, or I'd have been dead or whatever a long time ago. That's half of AA. The other half of AA is love. That came a little bit slower for me. I was real fortunate several years before I got sober, and I've been sober 10 years, 11 months, and 4 days. My sobriety date's June 1st. If I don't take a drink between now and then, my wife will be terribly happy, but I made 11 years now. But this gentleman came to Thompson. He was from California. He was a member of the Original 8. And this people that called themselves the Original 8 were the first 8 people that started AA in California. This was sometime in the latter part of the 30s, and they did like a lot of us did. They worked the first step, and they jumped all the way down to the 12th step. So they went to been in business 2 weeks, and they went out to the courtroom and talked to this judge and says, now we got to sober up somebody. And they kind of explained to him what was happening. And apparently he was a very wise judge, because he had a man out there was shaking like this, and he couldn't do anything but totter around. He couldn't talk. Been drunk for days and weeks and months and many different times. He said, I was fixing to put him in the stockade. But said, I'm going to give him to you people for 30 days. And you bring him back to me, and then I'll decide what to do with him. So these 30 people got real busy. I mean, these 8 people got real busy, and they got on 3-hour shifts. At least one of them was with the man at all times, most of the time the whole group. And when they first got him, they took him to the Salvation Army, and they got him some clothes, and they fed him real well, and they exercised him. They carried him into meetings every day, and they did all the things you should do for someone. And at the end of 30 days, he got where he could walk good, and he could talk, and he had a little bit of color in his cheeks, and his eyes had cleared up a little bit. And they got him a suit, and they marched him back down to the front of the courthouse, all the 8 of them sitting right behind him, so proud. And the judge asked the bailiff, said, who is this? And he says, well, I don't know, but I'll find out. And he checked with the man. He said, well, I'm the man that you gave to these people 30 days ago. The judge looked at him and said, this is just marvelous. These 8 people ran back so proud, said it's just wonderful. And they were about to bust with their pride. Said one man kept 8 people sober for 30 days. That's the love part of it. You give yourself, you give your time, you give your energy. Said he was talking about people that couldn't read and write. My first sponsor couldn't read or write a word when he died with 26 years sobriety. But he's one of the wisest people I've ever known. He kept telling me, said, Jimmy, the more you give, the more you get back. And I said, Darcy, give what? I don't have anything to give anybody. He said, give yourself, give your time, sit down and listen to someone that needs to be able to talk to somebody. Empty ashtrays. Do anything you're asked to do, and the more you give, the more you get back. And it just tickles me to death to think about what I have gotten back. And no way in the world can I give back what you people have given me. Because when I first started coming to AA, I was the most unlovable human being that ever lived. But I can stand here flat-footed and bare-faced and look you square in the eye and guarantee you it works. Not one single word has been changed in 50 years. It is a perfect program. We don't always work it, but if you live and you keep coming, I guarantee you, you get sober. Now, it took me 10 years of hard coming to AA to get sober. I was in and out just like a yo-yo. I picked up enough white chips to build a nice patio. No one ever said anything about it, but Jimmy, we love you. Please keep coming back. And they'd hug me and they'd kiss me. And I would come back out of jail or hospital or whatever my tail tucked, feeling so ashamed. And they'd meet me and they'd hug me and kiss me and say, come back, Jimmy, we love you. And that went on and went on and went on. And my sponsor now was a smart aleck, is and always will be, I guess. He told me one night, said, Jimmy, we need you so bad. I said, Tommy, there's nothing you can need me for. And he said, oh, yes, it is. So we tell the new people to watch you. And if they keep drinking, they're going to end up just like you. I went home so proud of that, and I was bragging to my wife about it. She just shook her head and said, man, you are sick, sure enough. Let me tell you while I'm at it, I am an alcoholic. I'm not a beer, wine, or gin-aholic. I've been drunk weeks at a time on lemon extract, weeks at a time on Minions aftershave, all the other extracts, hair tonic, anything with alcohol in it, perfume. I got a lovely Al-Anon. She's kind of like Anna. She's small and ladylike, but mean as a rattlesnake, too. I drank some of her perfume that a company had given her. It cost $100, a little bottle about that high. That's the maddest she ever was at me. The worst thing about that perfume drinking, though, the next 3 or 4 days, both ends were just awful. Just awful. At last, year before last, some other company gave her a bottle of it, and she used it, and we both got sick. So she just had to give it away. But please don't misunderstand me now. There's somebody sitting in here now saying, I'd never drink that junk. Please believe me. If you live and you keep drinking, you'll do everything I've done. If you live and you keep drinking, you will do it. And I've heard a lot of people, I've been locked up in thousands of people in thousands of places. I'd never do that, but then I'd see them later. Yeah, I did. And it tells you to go to any length to get sober. We went to any length to drink. I swapped $75 rod and reels for a $5 quart of whiskey and $30 and $40 an hour for a pint of whiskey. And I went to a bootlegger once begging him to let me have a half pint of shine on credit, just 50 cents. But then I didn't have many 50 cents. And I kept begging him. He kept looking down and saying, I like your shoes. I said, oh, come on, man, let me have it. He said, I like your shoes. And I walked off in my sock feet for a half pint of shine liquor. And I want to swap my boat, motor, and trailer for a case of beer. Again, please don't say you won't, because if you live and you keep drinking, you definitely will do it. And see, Lincoln County was dry all during my drinking days. And after I'd been sober 3 or 4 years, they got together and voted it wet just for pure meanness. I get mad now when I ride uptown. They got beer and wine everywhere, and I get so sick because I used to couldn't do it that way. I had to go across the river in the Carolina to a liquor store. And see, trying to coach and teach, I had to sneak out of town. And I tried not to be seen. And I didn't go to bars and juke joints and places to drink and American Legion and things like that. Because, see, I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I don't think anybody did. I did not want to be an alcoholic. And after I knew I was an alcoholic, I tried every way in the world not to be an alcoholic. I became a Christian in the Baptist church when I was 14 years old. Same kind of CD he's talking about. I heard the same preacher say, if you think about it, you might as well be doing it. So I ended up doing all those things, and I knew where I was going. But I tried not to be. When I came back home, I got back in the church. I taught Sunday school. I taught training union. And I'm not knocking these things, but I've been to meetings where they place hands on you and shake and shout to get the demons out. And I've been to meetings where they chant round and round, speaking in tongues to get the demons out. And I've been to many psychiatrists, and I've had 29 shock treatments, and I went to a witch doctor. That's a good story. Fellow in Augusta kept telling me, said, Jimmy, I've been listening to you for years, never heard you tell about going to the witch doctor. Why not? I said, well, Ken, the best reason I know of is I don't know about going to a witch doctor. He laughed, and he said, well, you did. And I said, well, how do you know? He said, I took you. So they told me, but they were trying to babysit me, and I kept insisting on going to a witch doctor, and he sprinkled something all over me, and they wrapped me up like a mummy, and they got scared and dumped me on my mother's back porch. And that didn't get me sober. Nothing until I got here. See, used to, I had awful bad habits. I used to come to in a strange jail. That's one that wasn't within 100 miles of home. Come to in jail and not knowing what jail I was in and not knowing why I was there. And I think it's Friday and it might be Tuesday of the next week. I'd lost 8 or 10 or 12 days. It's a horrible feeling to wake up with that fear and that horrible scared to death at what have I done. I didn't know if I'd killed someone in a car wreck. I didn't know if I'd broken into a place. I didn't know what had happened. But I had that horrible fear. And I woke up in the woods an awful lot of times and messed on myself, and ants and spiders crawling all in my clothes. And I woke up in hospitals an awful lot, strapped down, and that band across my belly. Again, I'd messed on myself and be begging somebody to give me something. And all they'd say is, just shut up now. Just shut up now. But I don't do that anymore. I don't have to do that anymore because of all you people in AA and 86,000 groups in 141 countries. All of you people can keep me sober. And I wake up to 2 miracles every morning. I wake up in my own bed sober. And I celebrate my sobriety every morning, first thing. I just lie there and grin all over. Because I didn't used to wake up that way. And I wake up down there and I'm just grinning because I can get up and go to the bathroom. And I can scratch whatever's itching me. I can scratch it. And I know where my truck is, but best of all, I don't need a drink. That's the greatest thing I know of. My first few years of sobriety, my wife would say, what are you laughing about? We'd just be sitting around. I say, I don't want a drink. I don't even need one. I don't want one. And now when I just break out laughing, she just grins because she knows I'm laughing because I don't need a drink. Because at one time I sold my soul for a drink. But because of you people, I don't have to. See, the motto at the workshop down here is we can do what I can't. And I couldn't stay sober anyway on earth. But we can. All of you, the program itself, and our higher power, my God, can keep me sober. And for that, I can never pay you people back. Because each morning I wake up and I start celebrating my sobriety. And I knew all the day, but I was going to come see you tonight. That's just icing on the cake. That makes for a beautiful, glorious day. I can look back at my first 46 years of life before I got sober, and I was never, ever happy. I was always anxious for this, anxious for that. I was hungover. I was wanting to be drunk if I wasn't drunk. All of these mixed feelings. And I would anticipate Friday is going to be a great day. We're going to win the ball game. And I'd win the ball game, and I'd be disappointed. Whatever it was, I'd be disappointed. I always felt like, is that all there is to life? You people gave me life. You gave me peace and happiness and joy and serenity. And I can never pay it back except try to pass it on. I told my wife, I said, when I die, I want one thing on my tombstone. He passed it on. She said, won't nobody know what it means but a few. I said, that's the few that counts, the ones that'll know. And that's what I want on it. That's all I want. To me, the privilege of being here and knowing you people is just beyond unbelievable. Absolutely. I go back now to Lincolnton and being dry. And I'd go across the river and tell myself the second big lie. Everybody in the world knows the first big lie. You wake up in jail or a ditch or hungover, and you say, oh, God, I'll never take another drink long as I live. And you mean it. I always did, and I hope you did. But that would kind of pass by. As I'd go across the river, going to the liquor store, I'd tell myself the second big lie. I ain't going to mess up this time. Because I'm going to buy a half a pint. And you can't get drunk on a half a pint. And I would buy that half a pint, and I'd take a drink coming back to the river. And I'd turn around and go back to the liquor store and buy all my money would buy. And then I'd be off and running and drunk again. It took me years and years to learn that the first drink got me drunk. It was not the bottom of the jug, the first drink. And I did it thousands of times before I knew it. But like I told you, I didn't go to bars or juke joints or anything. I would sneak back across the river because I was trying to coach and be a good citizen. And I'd get in my bed and I'd drink. And my wife, she commutes to Augusta and back every day to work, a 80-mile round trip. And she'd come home third, fourth, or fifth day, however long she could stand it, and find me still in bed and still drunk, and she would call the law. And they would all come over to my house, both of them. That's all we had at the time was two. They wouldn't have a warrant. They just picked me up and carried me to jail. If I happened to have money, I couldn't pay my way out. I was not allowed to make a phone call. I was there until they got ready to turn me loose. And back then, I was the only man in jail nearly all the time. And at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they locked up and went home, everybody but me. And they didn't come back till 8 o'clock next morning. And me and the Booger Bears in that jail, we had some awful go-rounds a lot of nights in there. I mean, some real doozies. They'd come in, I'd be hanging from the bars, you know. They'd be looking up and say, what's wrong with you? I'd tell them, just hanging around, you know. I'd be scared to death what it was, seeing all these things down there. But I wasn't learning much in that jail, being there by myself. So I started going to jail in Columbia and Spartanburg and Greenville, Augusta. And they put you in a drunk tank with 30 or 40 other people. And after 2 or 3 or 4 days, I could get where I could talk. And we start kind of comparing notes, you know, how drunks are, like people in the barber shop or beauty parlor. And they'd tell me, say, he can't do you that way. You have rights. So they told me all the things the sheriff couldn't do and all the things he had to do, and I made me a list. Don't forget, drunks are very intelligent people. And I made me a list, and I carried them to the sheriff, and I said, now you violate one more of these, and I'm going to sue you. Okay. See, up until now, I didn't pay any fine. I paid $2 for one meal when they let me out. That's all I paid. But after this, he made my wife pay $2 to get out of warrant, and I had to pay $70 to get out of jail. Now, that's intelligence. And I want them bragging around town that I showed him, I really taught him a lesson. And again, they would shake their head and say, man, you are smart, you know, really smart. This happened about 75 times. And I caught on. I'm a little slow on something. And I caught on, don't come home and drink. So I started hiding in the woods on little sawmill roads. And that's how I would wake up in the woods and the bushes and such. And I wasn't getting in trouble as long as I had liquor. I'd lie right out there in the woods 2.5, 3 weeks and drink. Until I ran out, that's when I'd get in trouble, and I'd start looking for some, trying to find some. The law would be looking for me, and all the other coaches would be looking for them in the family. And most of the time I would get back myself some way or another, or some hunters or whatever would find me and bring me back. But a lot of times they would find me in real bad shape. I had a broken arm once that had turned green and purple and every other color. And they'd carry me to the hospitals in Augusta and they'd tell him he's going to die. But he's got gastrointestinal this and he's got liver that and stomach this and that and other, and he's just going to die. But I wouldn't die. And they'd have a tube in every place you can put a tube, and they say, well, he's going to be a vegetable. He'll just lie here forever. But then I wouldn't do that, and they'd all be sorry. Literally, they'd be sorry. My family used to gather in the front room at the house and have prayer, but I would die. And that's not ugly. That's not ugly. They didn't know what to do with me. I'd done all the treatments, all the other places, all the hospitals and everything, and they didn't know what to do with me. So they were praying for my benefit as well, but I would go ahead and die. But then they would tell my family, said he's a wet brain. But he's damaged his mind so bad that he doesn't know right from wrong, that he can't think. But he'll always be drunk. And he begged my wife, many different psychiatrists begged my wife to lock him up and go ahead about her business. And when she first started bringing me to AA, she would tell all of them, but the doctor says he can't stay sober, but he hasn't got sense enough. And they would smile and pout and tell her, keep bringing him back, we'll see. That's why I believe with all my heart and soul, but if you live and you keep coming, you'll get sober. I don't think you can be too bad for the program at all. And I almost envy some of you new people out here. Some of you young people especially, because you can't imagine what a trip you're going on. You can't imagine what a marvelous journey you're going on. And it gets better every single day. It gets so good I can't hardly stand it. People ask me all the time, Jimmy, how are you today? And I just tell them the truth. If I was any better, I'd just bust, I believe. I just feel like half the time I'm floating in space. Life is that good. And I've been told lots of times you can't stay on a pink cloud forever. And I just grin at them and say, watch me. I'm going to show you. I like my pink cloud. I like staying up here. And I get knocked down here once in a while. But when I stop and think about how it used to be to how it is now, man, I can come back up in a hurry. I can come back up in a big hurry. Now, we're running a late hour, and I'm going to do a little something a little bit different here. I'm going to cut it a little short, scare a lot of people. But anyhow, I started, let me say this first. We have a progressive disease. And by that it means it gets worse and worse and worse. And I know it's an English teacher in here, and I'll apologize. There's no such word as worse. But you go out and drink and come back again, and Christmas you'll say it got a hell of a lot worse. Nothing compares to the word worse. In 1970, I had resigned from coaching the second time. I'd already been in jail 35 or 40 times. I've been in hospitals 35 or 40 times. I had 7 DUIs piled up. And I told my wife, I said, sugar cane, it get any worse than this. But from 70 to June 1st, 79, my sobriety date, I went back to jail 180 to 200 more times. And I went back to hospitals 80 to 90 more times. And I went to prison one time. And I went to 2 Christian homes for alcoholics, and I stayed in one of them a year. The judge sent me to a treatment program in South Georgia for a whole year. He said, if anybody needs it, you do. And I was beaten up by cops in jail, and I was beaten up by inmates in jail. I've laid on cement floors for days at an end. Everybody walk by, kick you, spit on you, pee on you. The lowest thing on earth is a drunk laying in the corner on the floor. Don't tell me I don't know the hard times. I'm a very successful coach in Lincolnton. And after 1970, when I had to resign, I became the town drunk in a big hurry. For a little while, I could convince somebody when I didn't have my license to take me to get me something to drink. But after a short time, no, they won't take you anywhere, Jimmy. Said, I'll buy you some food, I'll take you to a doctor, but I won't give you any money at all. And I begged on the streets of my hometown. I'd go in stores in my home and steal right off the shelves a lemon extract, Minnie's aftershave, or whatever. I'd go in my neighbors' homes and steal anything they had to drink in the house, no matter what it was, all mixed up, hair tonic, perfume. My wife would come home and said, I don't know if you smell more like a barber shop or a bakery, but all the stuff that I would be drinking. It ain't that funny now. But the point is, I want to get to now, I reached about as lower bottom as I guess anybody could reach. And I feel like I'm on as high top now. I got a good friend down in CD's country, Guy. It took him about 16 years to get a handle on the program. He and I are 2 or 3 of the happiest people that I know. Looks like the farther you go down, and CD was talking about it a while ago, the farther you go, the more gratitude you got. And of course, the more you give, the more you get back. In 1970, I started all of these hospitals again. Because when I run out of all my stuff, I started drinking Miles Nervine. And I took a lot of the pills too, Bobby Lee. I could call the pharmacist in a heartbeat. And I was real proud of that for a while. But Miles Nervine said if you take 2 teaspoons every 4 hours, it'll calm you down. And being a good drunk, I drank a bottle every 3 or 4 hours. And it did calm me down, just like this table up here, out cold. And my wife came home. She couldn't find anything wrong with me, and she finally found out what I was drinking. She called Dr. Pennington, and he said it's the nervine, and it's the bromide in it. And I have since found out that was one of the old detox methods. But anyhow, they explained it would take months to get all this out of my system. And they were waiting on the Georgia Regional in Augusta to open. This was in '70. And I was the first drunk patient to enter out there. And I hate to tell it, but I was real proud of that for a long time. Visitors would come, a salesman would come, I'd run right up in the face and say, I was the first one here. And they'd jump back, they scared them to death, you know. They didn't know what was wrong. And I don't know why, but I was so proud of it then. Anyhow, they kept me there for 6 months. And this time now, I'm 6 foot tall. I weighed 120, 22, 3 pounds. I looked like I'd been dead a week. My eyes hanging way back here and hanging, sagging all down. I've had false teeth since I was real young. My mouth got me in trouble early. And I'd have my teeth in my pocket and I couldn't walk. I'd be toddling around like this and be in a strange jail. This is when I'm 34 and 5 and 6 years old. And everybody in jail be calling me Pops and Pops and Pop. And 3 or 4 days later when I could talk, I said, what y'all doing calling me Pops? I said, how old do you think I am? 68, 70, 75 years old. That's how old I looked. So when I went out there, that's the way I looked in '70. But they kept me for 6 months. They explained it would take a long time to get all this out of my system. And they had a pretty good meal program out there. And they had a gym. And I worked out and I ate real well. And I got clean. I got free of all of it. I was dry. I was clean, the whole bit. My wife was going to take me back. I had a chance for another job. The life looked good. And I got up to about 155 or 60 pounds. The second step says, came to believe, but a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. So many people say, oh, I'm crazy when I'm drinking. But when I'm sober, I got plenty of sense. I went back to the regional 34 more times. I stayed out there altogether 3.5 or 4 years in the '70s. And I went to Linwood, the VA hospital in Augusta a lot. And I'd act ugly or get drunk on the alcohol ward, and they'd put me in 15 East, which is the nut ward. And me and the other nuts that lived together over there 2 or 3 weeks at a time. I went to Dr. Jim's. I went to all the places. Then in the early '70s, they started sending me to Milledgeville. And at that time, Milledgeville was for the hopeless, helpless drunk. They had no program. They had no treatment. They took you over there and they locked you up. And they would take 60 or 70 of us drunks and put us on the same floor with 60 or 70 crazy people. And I don't even know who was the craziest. But you had a little bitty room in the army bunk and rubbed the wall with this hand, my elbow, and touched the wall with this hand. And had a little chair on the window, and I sat there by the chair an awful lot. Because you get out in the hall with these other people, and they'd have a bowel movement and run down the leg, and they pick it up and put it on you or throw it at you. They sit down at the table, eat with one hand, and masturbate with the other. They sneak up behind you and try to bite you all the time. So I stayed in my room an awful lot to stay out of that mess out there. And they always put me up on the 3rd floor. And I'd sit there in the big oak trees with limbs come right up to the window. And I'd sit there and talk to the birds that light on the limbs, and I'd tell them I ain't going to drink anymore. I'm not ever going to drink again. And I promised the birds and God, my wife, and my children, everybody I know, I'm not ever going to drink again. Because, see, I'm not an animal. And I don't have to be locked up here behind bars and treated like an animal. I'm not ever going to drink again. Busy highway out there and cars going up and down and people pulling boats and motors behind them. And I'd be telling them, I'm going to ride. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my children fishing and hunting. And I'm going to teach Sunday school and training union. And I'm going to be a Boy Scout leader because I'm not going to drink anymore. And I'd sit there for months telling that same thing over and over and over. And they'd let me come home for a visit. And I might be there 2 days or 4 days. And I tell myself the same stupid lie is I'm going to cross the river. I'm going to buy half a pint. And I'm not going to get drunk because I'm going to buy half a pint. And then I'd turn around and go back and buy all my money would buy. And then I'd be drunk. And then after I was detoxed, I'd be sitting in the same chair, looking out the same window, talking to the same birds, telling them I ain't going to drink anymore. Not ever going to drink again. People, when you get out of a place like that once, or 10 times or 20 times, you got a chance for a job, your life is looking great, and you're clean, and you get outside, and you think about drinking one beer, one little drink. That's the insanity of alcoholism, thinking that it's going to be different this time, because it is. It's going to be worse than what it was last time. I guarantee you that is not ever going to get better as long as you're drinking. That's the insanity of alcoholism. That's why these steps are so important. My wife reads the Big Bunks' book, and said, my Lord, how did they know you so well 50 years ago? It fits me perfect. It fits you perfect. Not one soul in this room is too dumb for the program. Not one of you is too smart for the program. Not one of you is unique. You're not different. You're an alcoholic, and the program fits you, and it will work if you want it to bad enough. CD said tonight, get up off your butt and do something. Start working these steps, going to meetings, work them, live them as hard as you can go, and your life will start swinging. Something good happened in 70. This dear nurse carried my wife and I to our first AA meeting. And it was a closed meeting. I went over here, and they went over here, she did. We came out, and I said, Sugar, what did they tell you? And she said, they told me that I'd been wrong, that I shouldn't pour out your liquor. And I fell in love with AA instantly then. Boy, oh boy, y'all were the greatest people in the world to stop that woman from pouring out my liquor. But I would go to meetings, and I'd hear people speak, been in jail once or twice, in hospitals once or twice, and I really couldn't relate. And I think how wonderful this is for you, how marvelous it is for y'all. And I wish I could. But really and truly, I could read it, the stuff, but I couldn't understand anything. The doctors wasn't all wrong. I had an awful lot of brain damage. But I couldn't gather it, what it was. But keep going, keep going. You never know how important one meeting can be. I was back in the region on 75, and Peggy G, a friend of mine from Albany, came and got me. And I went because they were going to have a dance and they were going to have a party. Excuse me, I didn't think it was going to help me. But I went for the other things. The meeting started, and I got Peggy by the hand, and we went to the back. This man got up, and he said, my name is Jack Brennan. And he said, I wasn't supposed to be able to come tonight. I said, God's got one man he wants me to talk to. He said, the other 1,200, please be quiet and let him listen. And cold chills go all over me now, knowing that God loved me enough to send a man all the way from Brooklyn to talk to me. Now, maybe 1,200 people thought the same thing. I hope they did. But Jack started off, said, I was 12, my little brother was 10. And my daddy was drunk, and he was mean, and we were hiding from him. And my little brother found a jug of wine, and he tasted it, and he said, oh, Jack, this is sweet. Said, you try it. And he tasted it, but said it wasn't sweet, and it wasn't sour. Said it was absolute magic. The most wonderful stuff he ever put in his mouth. And he woke up in his mother's arms, and she was crying, saying, Jack, I can't stand two of you. He said, Mama, don't cry. I said, what are you talking about? She said, you drank the whole jug, and you passed out on this Sunday morning. And I can't stand you and your daddy both being drunk. Instant alcoholic. I was an instant alcoholic. He telling his mama, don't cry. Please don't cry. I won't ever do it again. Planning where he would get his next drink. He later grew up in Brooklyn and got married. He lost his job as a wheelman for the mafia because he kept blacking out and they didn't know where he might take him. So he started robbing banks on Sunday and these kind of crazy things, you know, when they was already closed and couldn't even get in them on anything. His wife got so fed up that she threatened every bar in the neighborhood if they sold him a drink that she'd burn them down. But she said, Jack, there's something new in New York called AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Said, if you'll go, I'll buy you a drink. And of course, we all go to hell for a drink. And he went with her to the meeting, and he said all he remembered them saying is, if you don't take the first drink, you won't get drunk. He said, I already knew that. He came back, and things got worse and worse, and she got court papers to have him thrown out of the house. And 2 cops came to serve him. He whipped them. And they came back with 8, and they broke both jaws and all his fingers, and he woke up in the hospital in a straitjacket. And he's kind of like I was when he got out. He went looking for them. And he found all 8 of them together, and they broke both jaws and all his fingers, and he woke up in a straitjacket in the hospital. And as he put it, he said, would you believe I found them 12 more times? Now, this man had my attention. I was listening to him. He was sober. He looked happy. He was well-dressed. And I got to thinking this might even work for me. And then they threw him out of Brooklyn. The only man in the history ever to be thrown out of Brooklyn. And he went on the Bowery on skid row for nearly 3 years, drinking anything he could drink, sleeping in the alleys, ditches, and gullies. Don't forget, he had never been but to one meeting. He was in the back of a filthy restaurant trying to get a drink to stay down, and he kept coming back and kept coming back. We've all experienced that. He had his chin hung on the commode because he couldn't even hold his head up, and a voice said, Jack, you had enough. Call AA. That was my God talking to Jack. He had a spiritual experience right there. He crawled out on the sidewalk begging someone to call AA, and finally somebody said, yes, we'll call. Said, and a little man and a little woman came with all the love in the world and said, come on, go with us and you may never drink again. That night, it was 28 years ago. And he was looking good, and he was happy, and I knew I had a chance. God works through people. He worked through Jack that night, and all the nice people from Thompson invited me to come over to their group, to come join them, and I started going, but the doctors wasn't all wrong. Thompson's a small town, but I couldn't find a meeting 2 nights on the road to save my neck. I'd ride and try to find it, and I'd pull off the road and sit and cry because I couldn't find where I was going. A lot of times I'd be so upset after I got there I couldn't stay 5 to 10 minutes. Sometimes I'd get there, the meeting was halfway over, but the people always loved me and always said, Jimmy, please keep coming back, we do love you. And I couldn't get used to that, but I had nowhere else to go. And God kept pushing me to go. And my sponsor, that couldn't read or write a word, he finally said, Jimmy, when they quit trying to stay sober, and it like to broke my heart, I said, please don't give up on me. He said, oh no. He said, you let go and let God, because you can't do it. That's one of the biggest little sayings we have, is let go and let God do it. And he also said, Jimmy, if you're sober, they can't lock you up anywhere. They won't put you in jail or anything if you're sober. And I hung on to that, but all I had in me, it still took me 4 more years. But June 1st, 79 was my last drink. And then I had a birthday, and I was happy. And everybody was happy for me. They said, Jimmy, you just as happy as if you had good sense, you know. We joked about it. I still joke about it now. A doctor told me 2 years ago, said if you don't drink for another 30 years, you might be normal. So that made me feel pretty good. But my life started getting a little better, and after about a year and a half or 2 years, people got to asking me to speak a little bit here and there and yonder. After 3 or 4 years sobriety, I could find my way around pretty well. And I told my wife, I said, sugar, it can't get any better. This can't get any better, but it did. The next year was better. The next year was better. Now, this so good now, I can't hardly stand it. And I know that next year is going to be better, and tomorrow's going to be better, next week's going to be better. And there's no doubt in my mind. And I do things different from other people. Don't bother me a bit in the world. When I first started going to meetings out of town, I didn't know where they were. But you know, when you're drunk and the cops got you and snatching you and throwing you in a car and cussing you and calling you so-and-so, but you pull up to a cop like I'm dressed now and say, officer, can you tell me where the Falcon Inn is? He said, well, yes, sir, I sure can, sir. And that just tickles the hell out of me. Just tickles me to death. And I asked everywhere I went, I'd stop and ask her. Even after I knew where I was going, I'd stop and ask her. My wife would be with me and say, oh, don't bother a cop. You know where you're going? I said, yeah, I want to hear. I want to hear. Brain damage is marvelous when you learn to take advantage of it. And I have, believe me. But look here at all these gorgeous ladies in here. I went to many meetings and go in the door and hug and kiss them all. Make my round and go out the door and wait 3 or 4 minutes, come back in again, hug and kiss them all. Pretend I just got there, you know. I did it 4 times one night. The girl said to an older lady, said, he's been in here 4 times. She said, shh, leave him alone. He's got brain damage. So I have a good time doing such things as that. And as I told you, Lincolnton's small. I can ride uptown, or I can circle town and come home about a minute and a half. And I do it lots of times during the day. And I'd been sober 3 or 4 years, and I rode up and back and up and back and up and back many times that day. A young man was out in his yard working. And he saw me that night, and he said, Coach, so I'm back to coach now. I was SOB for a while, but I'm back to coach. He said, you passed me and came right back by me at least 30 times today. He said, where was you going? I said, nowhere. He said, well, what was you doing? I said, nothing. He said, well, why was you doing? And I grinned at him and said, cause I can. He looked at me right funny, and he said, well, I can too, but I didn't, you know. I told him, I said, Matt, you know the times I was in jail and hospital so much. But I used to say, I'm going to ride, and I'm going to go fishing, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I said, I still do it now, just simply because I can. And I do a lot of things that way now just because I can. My life is so good, but words just really can't describe it. And it's not just me, and not just CD or Billy or anybody in here. It's anybody that wants it bad enough. If you work on it, and you work on it, and you want it bad enough, you can get it too. I guarantee you with all my heart and soul that it does, and it will work for you. I appreciate y'all listening to me so much. It's so wonderful seeing some of these old friends, not old in age, but known for a good while. And it's so nice to make all you new friends out here. I love you all with all my heart and soul. Thank you so much.